I give food to my children, and everything I have will be yours, said the widowed farmer to the humble young woman. Thomas Anderson clutched the empty basket against his chest as tears streamed down his face, marked by sun and exhaustion. His two children, 6-year-old Ethan and 4-year-old Emily, clung to his legs with that expression of those who no longer had the strength even to cry. That's when the young woman appeared at the farm gate. Thomas had never seen that woman before, but he didn't hesitate. He ran to her like someone chasing after the last hope. "Miss, please." His voice came out broken. "Give food to my children, and everything I have will be yours. This farm, these lands, everything. I just need them to eat." The young woman stopped and looked at that man on his knees in the dust. She had been walking for hours, fleeing from something that still haunted her. Her yellow dress was dirty from the road, her blonde hair disheveled by the wind. But something in that desperate plea touched deep in her heart. "I don't want your farm," she said softly, approaching. "But I can help." Thomas felt such great relief that he almost fainted. The young woman knelt near the children, who looked at her with eyes hollow from hunger. "What are your names?" she asked in a sweet voice. Ethan, the older one, just lowered his eyes. Emily tried to speak, but only managed to swallow dryly. "It's been 3 days," Thomas explained, his voice trembling. 3 days since they've eaten anything. I tried, I swear I tried. But the last harvest rotted in the field. I have no money. I have nothing left to sell." The young woman opened the small backpack she carried. There was only a bag of flour, some potatoes, and a piece of cheese. It was all she had managed to gather before running away from New York City. "It's not much, but I'll make something," she said, standing up. "What's your name?" Thomas asked, still incredulous at this apparition. "Rachel. Rachel Mitchell." She entered the simple house with old wooden walls and a wood-burning stove that seemed to have seen better days. Rachel lit the fire, took water from the bucket, and started cooking. Her hands worked quickly, making a soup with the wilted vegetables she found in a corner of the kitchen and the flour she had brought. Thomas watched her every movement, still not believing this was happening. When the soup was ready, Rachel served the children in cracked bowls. Ethan and Emily ate so fast that she had to ask them to slow down. "Take it easy, dears. It's not good to eat so quickly." The children obeyed, but their eyes shone with relief. Thomas sat in a corner and cried again, this time with gratitude. When the children finished, Rachel prepared a little more and offered it to Thomas. He refused at first, but she insisted. "You need strength. It's no use feeding them if you collapse." He ate in silence, and Rachel noticed how his hands trembled holding the spoon. That man was at his limit. "What happened here?" she asked when everyone had finished. Thomas took a deep breath before answering. "My wife, Sarah, passed away 8 months ago, a fever that no doctor knew how to treat. She was the heart of this house, you know. Took care of the children, the garden, the food. I took care of the crops, the animals. We were a team." He paused to wipe his eyes. "When she left, I tried to do everything alone, but how could I be in the field and at home at the same time? The children cried. They needed me. The crops needed care. I didn't sleep, didn't eat properly, and everything fell apart." Rachel looked around. The house was messy, with clothes piled up and dust accumulated. Through the window, you could see the field with dying crops. "This year's harvest rotted because I couldn't harvest it in time," Thomas continued. "I lost everything. So I sold the chickens, the pigs, even the milk cow. The money ran out. This week was the worst. There was nothing left, not a potato, not an egg. And seeing my children hungry..." His voice faltered again. "I was going to the city today. I was going to try to borrow something, anything. But I was afraid to leave them alone, and then you showed up." Rachel felt a tightening in her chest. She had her own problems. She was running from a complicated situation in New York City. But she couldn't just walk away and leave those children. "I can stay a few days," she said, without thinking too much. "Help get things organized." "A few days?" Thomas looked at her with hope. "Miss, I have no way to pay you. I don't have any money. I'm not asking for money, I just need a place to stay for a while." "But why? A young woman like you walking alone on these roads." Rachel looked away. "Everyone has their reasons for being where they are, right?" Thomas understood he shouldn't press further. At that moment, it didn't matter where she came from. It mattered that she was there. That first night, Rachel cleaned the house while the children slept. Thomas tried to help, but she could see he was exhausted. "Go to sleep," she said. "You need real rest." "I can't remember the last time I slept through the night," he confessed. "Then this will be the first. I'll look after them." Thomas hesitated, but exhaustion won out. He lay down in the next room and, for the first time in months, slept without waking up every hour, afraid that something had happened to his children. Rachel stayed awake, cleaning, organizing, thinking about everything she had left behind. She was 23 years old with a story she didn't want to tell. A law school graduate, she had worked at a big firm in New York City, but she discovered things she shouldn't have. Fake documents, fraud, people being deceived. When she tried to report it, she received threats. Her boss made it clear she had two options: keep quiet or disappear. Rachel chose to disappear. She took the little money she had, bought some provisions, and left the city without telling anyone. She didn't know where she was going, she only knew she needed to vanish for a while. And then she found that lost farm in the hills of rural Pennsylvania. By the time the sun rose, Rachel had already made coffee with the last bit of supplies she found in the pantry. Thomas woke up startled, disoriented, until he remembered he wasn't alone. The smell of coffee guided him to the kitchen. "Good morning," Rachel said, pouring him a cup. "I thought I had dreamed it," he confessed. "You didn't dream. And today we're going to start getting things in order here." Ethan and Emily woke up a little later. For the first time in days, they didn't wake up crying from hunger. Rachel had made a simple porridge with leftover flour. After breakfast, she sat down with Thomas to understand the situation. "Show me the farm," she requested. They walked through the fields while Thomas explained everything. The property had 20 acres with good soil for planting, but it was all abandoned, with weeds growing where there should have been organized crops. "Do you have seeds?" Rachel asked. "Some stored in the shed. But what's the use of planting if I can't tend to it?" "What if you weren't alone?" "What do you mean?" "I can take care of the house and the children. You take care of the planting. It's like you said, you were a team, we can be a temporary team." Thomas stopped and looked at her. "But you don't know me, I don't know you. How can you trust like that?" "I don't trust," Rachel was honest. "But these children need food, and you need help. Sometimes you have to take a risk." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. That same afternoon, Rachel organized a routine. They would wake up early. Thomas would go to the field while she would take care of the house and the children. She would make meals with whatever they had, and gradually they would try to recover the property. "But we still don't have enough food," Thomas reminded. "Tomorrow you'll go to town to sell those old tools from the shed. There aren't many, but they should be enough to buy the basics for a few days." "I can't sell the tools, I'm going to need them." "Thomas, your children need to eat before you need the tools. Later we'll figure out how to recover." He knew she was right. The next day, he went to the nearest town, Pine Ridge, a 2-hour walk away. He returned with a bag of rice, beans, some greens, and even eggs. "I got a good price," he said, excited for the first time. "And the shop owner said if I need to, I can do some odd jobs for him." Rachel smiled. It was a start. The first days were difficult. Rachel noticed that Ethan, the older boy, hardly spoke. He just observed everything with sad eyes, helping where he could, but always in silence. Emily was more talkative, but she had nightmares every night and woke up crying for her mother. One morning, Rachel was washing clothes at the tub when Ethan approached. He stood there looking at her. "Do you need something, dear?" she asked. The boy didn't answer, just kept looking. "Do you want to help me?" He nodded. Rachel showed him how to wring out the clothes to remove the excess water. Ethan did everything just right, but without saying a word. That night, when Thomas returned from the field, Rachel mentioned the boy's silence. "He stopped speaking after his mother passed away," Thomas explained, sadness etched on his face. "In the first days he still talked, asked when she was coming back. I tried to explain, but how do you explain to a child that his mother is never coming back? One day he just stopped. He became mute. He needs help, Thomas, from someone who understands these things. I know, but I don't have money to take him to a specialist. I barely have enough for food. Rachel understood his frustration. She decided she would try, little by little, to get Ethan to speak again on her own. The following week, the first signs appeared that things were improving. Thomas managed to prepare a small bed for new vegetables. Rachel set up a garden near the house with herbs and spices. The children looked healthier, more alive. But the peace didn't last long. One afternoon, a woman appeared at the farm. It was Mrs. Parker, the nearest neighbor, who lived 3 kilometers away. She was known in the area for knowing everything and everyone. "Thomas," she called from the gate. He came from the field, sweaty and with dirt on his hands. "Mrs. Parker, what a surprise." "The surprise is this young woman living here with you," she said, looking Rachel up and down. "The town folks are talking." Rachel felt her blood run cold. Talking. She couldn't draw attention. "Rachel is helping me with the children," Thomas explained. "Oh, is she helping?" Mrs. Parker gave a malicious smile. "A young, pretty woman, alone with a widower. You know how people talk, right? People can say whatever they want. I'm taking care of my children. I just came to warn you. They say she appeared out of nowhere. No one knows who she is. And you, poor thing, widowed for less than a year, already bringing another woman into the house. Enough, Mrs. Parker. You have no right to come here and speak like that. I have the right to warn a neighbor who might be being deceived. This girl might be after your land, Thomas. Have you thought about that?" Rachel wanted to respond, but Thomas was faster. "Rachel saved my children from starvation when I had nothing left. If she wanted to deceive me, she would have accepted my offer to take the farm on the first day. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have work to do." Mrs. Parker left grumbling, but the damage was done. Thomas was thoughtful for the rest of the day. At night, after the children fell asleep, he talked with Rachel. "I don't suspect you," he began, but Mrs. Parker raised a point. "I know nothing about you, where you came from, why you were alone on that road." Rachel took a deep breath. She knew this moment would come. "I was running away," she said, deciding to tell at least part of the truth. "I worked at a big firm in New York City. I discovered irregularities, fraud. When I tried to do the right thing, I was threatened. My boss made it clear I should disappear, so I did." "What kind of fraud?" "Fake documents, mostly. People losing properties because of forged papers. I'm a lawyer, Thomas, or I was. I studied hard to graduate, worked hard to get that job, and then I found out I was helping to destroy lives." Thomas fell silent, processing the information. "Are you in danger?" "I don't know. I think if I stay quiet and far away, they'll forget me. That's why I need to stay hidden for a while." "And you chose to hide here?" "I didn't choose. I was walking with no destination and ended up finding you and your children. It was fate, I guess." Thomas looked at her with a different expression. Respect, perhaps. "A lawyer. Who would have thought?" "An unemployed lawyer on the run," Rachel corrected. "It's nothing to be proud of." "I think it is. You tried to do the right thing even knowing it would hurt you. Not everyone has that courage." It was the first time someone had validated her decision. Rachel felt her eyes well up, but she held back the tears. "Thank you for trusting me," she said softly. "Thank you for staying," he replied. In the following weeks, a routine was established. Rachel took care of the house with dedication, made simple but nutritious meals, and gradually earned the children's trust. Emily already called her Aunt Rachel and asked her to tell stories before bed. Ethan still didn't speak, but there was a change in him. He followed Rachel everywhere, helping where he could. She noticed he liked to stay in the yard watching the birds. One day, Rachel started singing while washing dishes. It was an old song that her grandmother used to sing when she was a child. Ethan froze. He stood still in the middle of the yard, staring at her. Rachel kept singing, not paying much attention. When she finished, Ethan approached and touched her arm. "What is it, dear?" He made a gesture with his hand, as if wanting her to sing again. Rachel understood and started the song over. For the first time, she saw the boy smile. That night, she told Thomas, "I think I found something Ethan likes, music. Sarah used to sing a lot, Thomas recalled, with a wistful expression. She had a beautiful voice. She always sang the children to sleep. What songs did she sing? Various ones, but there was one that was his favorite. How did it go again? Thomas tried to remember, humming some off-key notes. Rachel recognized it. I know that one. My grandmother sang it too. Really? Thomas seemed surprised. It's an old song, not very common. My grandmother was from a traditional family in Pennsylvania. She said it was a song passed down from generation to generation. Sarah was from Pennsylvania too, from Williamsburg. My grandmother was from Williamsburg too. They looked at each other, sensing there was something more to that coincidence, but neither of them said anything. The next day, Rachel sang the song to Ethan before he went to sleep. The boy held her hand and closed his eyes, calmer than she had ever seen him. As she was leaving the room, she heard a small voice. Thank you. Rachel turned quickly. Ethan had his eyes open, looking at her. Did you say something? She asked, approaching. The boy nodded. Thank you, Aunt Rachel. They were his first words in months. Rachel had to run out to tell Thomas, who was out in the field even at night, checking the crops. He spoke, Thomas. Ethan spoke. Thomas dropped everything and ran home. He entered the room where Ethan was already asleep and stood there looking at his son, tears streaming down. My boy, he whispered. My boy is back. Rachel stepped out to give him privacy. She sat on the porch step, gazing at the stars. For the first time since fleeing New York City, she felt she had made the right choice. Maybe all of this had a purpose. But the peace didn't last. A few days later, a car stopped in front of the farm. It was an expensive car, completely out of place in that simple setting. Out stepped an elegant woman in her 60s, dressed in fine clothes with a stern expression. Where is Thomas Anderson? She asked, not even bothering to greet. Rachel was in the yard with the children. He's out in the field. Can I help you? The woman looked her up and down with contempt. Who are you? Rachel, I'm helping with the children. Oh, you're that opportunist Mrs. Parker told me about. Rachel felt anger rising, but controlled herself. I don't know what you've heard, but... Mrs. Margaret Campbell, the woman introduced herself. Thomas's mother-in-law, or rather, ex-mother-in-law since my daughter is gone. Rachel understood. This was Sarah's mother. Nice to meet you. Thomas is... I know where he is. I know this farm better than anyone. After all, it belonged to my family before it passed to my daughter. Mrs. Campbell walked through the property as if she owned it, completely ignoring Rachel. She observed everything with a critical eye, shaking her head. When Thomas appeared, sweaty and in work clothes, she stared at him coldly. Thomas, we need to talk. Mrs. Campbell, I wasn't expecting your visit. It's not a visit. I came to solve a problem. What problem? This farm. My daughter inherited this land from my father. When she married you, it was transferred to her name. And now that she's gone... The land goes to her children, Thomas finished. I know how it works. Exactly. But the children are minors. Someone needs to manage this property until they grow up. And that someone is me. I'm their father. You... Mrs. Campbell let out a bitter laugh. Look at the state of this farm, Thomas. Everything abandoned, dying. You don't have the ability to take care of this. I'm recovering. Things were tough, but now you've brought a stranger to live here, a woman no one knows. Rachel saved my children, or is taking advantage of your weakness. You're very naive, Thomas. Rachel approached, unable to stay silent any longer. With all due respect, you know nothing about the situation here. And you have no right to interfere in family matters, Mrs. Campbell retorted. I came here with a proposal, Thomas. I'll take over the management of the land until the children turn 18. You can continue living here and work as a caretaker. You'd receive a fair salary and... Are you crazy? Thomas interrupted. This land belongs to my children. I will never let you take it from them. I'm not taking it. I'm protecting their inheritance from an incompetent father. Get out of here, Thomas said, his voice trembling with anger. Now. You'll regret this, Thomas. I have documents, lawyers. I can prove you're not fit to raise these children properly. Try, he challenged. but you won't be able to take my children from me." Mrs. Campbell looked at Rachel one more time. "You'll regret getting involved in this family," she said before returning to the car. When she left, Thomas was shaking with anger and fear. "She can't do that, can she?" he asked Rachel. "She can't take the children from me." Rachel thought carefully before answering. "Legally, she can try. If she can prove you don't have the financial or emotional means to raise the children, she can file for custody." "But they're my children." "I know, and we'll fight to keep them with you, but we need to be prepared. She mentioned lawyers, documents, she'll come ready." "And what do? I don't have money for a lawyer." Rachel looked at him with determination. "You have a lawyer right here. I may not be practicing anymore, but I still know how it works, and I won't let her do this to you and these children." That night, Rachel explained all the legal details to Thomas. For Mrs. Campbell to get custody, she would need to prove he was an unfit father. They needed to show the opposite. "The farm needs to be in order," Rachel said. "The house clean, the children well cared for. We need to prove you're restoring the property. But how? We're still struggling to survive day by day. We need help. Do you know other farmers in the area?" "A few. But after Sarah left, I distanced myself from everyone. I was ashamed of the situation. Then it's time to ask for help. Pride won't feed your children or keep them with you." Thomas knew she was right. The next day he went to visit the neighbors. Most welcomed him warmly, offering help with seeds, lending tools, even work in exchange for a few days of service. Rachel, meanwhile, began investigating Mrs. Campbell. She hitched a ride to town and went to the county clerk's office, claiming to be Thomas's cousin and helping with documentation issues. She discovered that the land had indeed belonged to Sarah's grandfather and had been registered in her name when they married. But she also found something interesting. Mrs. Campbell had debts, a lot of debts. She had invested poorly, lost money in failed businesses. And a 20-acre farm could solve her financial problems. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. When she returned home, Rachel found Thomas with Ethan and Emily planting seedlings in the garden. It was a simple but beautiful scene, a father and his children working together. "Did you find out anything?" he asked when the children ran off chasing a butterfly. "Mrs. Campbell is broke. She needs this land, Thomas. It's not about protecting the children. It's about saving herself." "So she'll lie? She'll make up things about me to get what she wants?" "Probably, but we have an advantage. The truth is on our side. Ethan is talking again, the children are healthy, the farm is improving. Any judge who comes here will see that you're a good father." But Mrs. Campbell was more prepared than they imagined. A week later, a summons arrived. She was suing Thomas for custody of the children, claiming he had abandoned his grandchildren, that the farm was in a state of misery, and that an unknown woman was living on the property without proper explanation. "She's using you against me," Thomas said to Rachel, reading the document. "It says here that you could be a threat to the children." "I'll leave if I have to," Rachel said, even as her heart tightened. "I don't want to be the reason you lose your children. No, you stay. Without you, I wouldn't have made it this far. We'll face this together." Rachel knew this was getting dangerous for her too. If the case went to court, she would have to expose herself. And exposing herself meant the people from the firm in New York City could find out where she was. But looking at Ethan and Emily, she knew she couldn't just leave. "All right, but we need a strategy." They spent the next few weeks preparing. Rachel reviewed all the farm documents, organized proof of improvements, obtained written statements from neighbors attesting to Thomas's good character. She also prepared the children for what might happen. "Maybe some people will come here to ask questions," she explained to Ethan and Emily. "Important people who need to know if you're happy." "We are happy," Emily said without hesitation. "You and Daddy take good care of us." "And will you stay with us forever, Aunt Rachel?" Ethan asked, his voice still quiet but firm. Rachel looked at Thomas, who was listening from the doorway. He too was waiting for the answer. "I'll stay as long as you need me," she promised. The hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks later. Rachel spent nights awake studying similar cases, preparing arguments. Thomas worked even harder on the farm, trying to show that everything was improving. One afternoon, while Rachel was reviewing papers at the kitchen table, she found something interesting. It was an old photo that had fallen out of one of the house documents. It showed a young woman, very similar to Sarah, next to another girl. "Thomas, do you know who this other girl in the photo with Sarah is?" He looked at the image. "I don't know. Sarah had a cousin she was very close to as a child. But they had a fight or something. She never really told me." "Why?" Rachel looked closer at the photo. The other girl had very familiar features. The eyes, the shape of the face. What was the cousin's name? "Let me think. It started with R. Rachel. It was Rachel too." Rachel's heart raced. She picked up the photo and looked more closely. That girl in the photo was about 10 years old, the same age Rachel was when... "Thomas, where was Sarah's family from?" "Williamsburg, you already know that. And what was her maiden name?" "Mitchell. Sarah Mitchell Anderson." Rachel felt the floor disappear beneath her feet. Mitchell, like hers. She picked up the photo and looked at the girl next to Sarah. Her face, it was her. She was sure. "Thomas," her voice came out trembling, "I know this girl in the photo. It's me." "What?" "Sarah was my cousin. I remember her. We played together on vacations when we visited Williamsburg. But when I was about 11, our families had a fight. Something about inheritance, about land. We never saw each other again." Thomas sat down, processing the information. "You're Sarah's cousin, the Rachel she sometimes mentioned." "I think so." "She mentioned me?" "Rarely. But when she did, it was with affection. She said she missed a cousin who was her best friend in childhood." Rachel felt tears falling. All those coincidences made sense now. The song they both knew, the connection she felt with that family, everything. "I didn't know, Thomas. When I arrived here and you said the name Sarah, I didn't make the connection. It's a common name, and you never mentioned her last name. And I never knew your full last name until I read it in the documents for the hearing. It was always just Rachel." They fell silent, absorbing the revelation. Rachel remembered afternoons playing with Sarah in the backyards of Williamsburg, the stories they made up, the secrets they shared. And now she was there, taking care of her children, helping her husband. "Sarah would have liked knowing you're here," Thomas said, wiping his own eyes. "She would have been happy to know someone she loved is taking care of her children." "I didn't come here on purpose. I didn't know that." "I know. But sometimes things happen for a reason. You arrived here when we needed it most. When I thought I had lost everything, you appeared. Maybe Sarah was watching over us in some way." Rachel wasn't much for believing in such things, but in that moment she wanted to believe. The discovery changed something between them. They were no longer strangers who had met by chance. They were family, even if distant. This connection to Sarah gave Rachel even more determination to protect that family, but Mrs. Campbell was about to make her next move. 2 days before the hearing, she showed up at the farm again, this time with a man in a suit. "This is Mr. Lawrence Porter, my attorney," she announced. "I've come to make one final offer, Thomas. Withdraw your custody challenge, and I guarantee you can continue seeing the children. You can visit them at my place in the city where they'll have a proper education, good food, a better future." "No," Thomas replied firmly. "Think carefully. Do you really believe you can give them what I can? Private school, doctors, opportunities?" "I can give them love. I can give them a family. And that's worth more than anything your money can buy. Love doesn't put food on the table, Thomas. But you're not doing this out of love, are you?" Rachel intervened. "You're doing it for the money." "How dare you?" "I know about your debts, Mrs. Campbell. I know you're broke. This land is your last chance to save yourself financially." Her attorney and Mrs. Campbell exchanged glances. Rachel had hit the mark. "You have no proof of that," Mrs. Campbell said, but her voice was less steady. "Yes, I do. And I'll present it at the hearing if necessary. I'll show that this lawsuit has nothing to do with the children's well-being. It's about greed." "You liar." "I'm an attorney, Mrs. Campbell, and I worked at one of the largest firms in New York City. I know exactly how to gather evidence." The attorney whispered something in Mrs. Campbell's ear. She took a deep breath, trying to compose herself. "We'll see who's right at the hearing," she said before leaving. When they were alone, Thomas looked at Rachel with concern. "You mentioned New York City. If you expose yourself at the hearing—" "I know, but I'll do whatever it takes." "Rachel, you might be putting yourself in danger for us." "You're my family, Thomas. Sarah was my family. These children are my family. I won't let that woman destroy that." On the night before the hearing, Rachel prepared everything. She organized every document, every piece of evidence, every argument. She knew Mrs. Campbell would come with everything she had, but she was ready. "I can't sleep," Thomas confessed. They were sitting on the porch looking at the stars. "Me neither, but it's going to be okay." "How can you be so sure?" "Because I've seen you together. I've seen how you love these children, how you dedicate yourself to them. No judge can ignore that." "And if it's not enough?" "It will be. It has to be." Thomas was silent for a moment before speaking again. "Rachel, if things don't go well tomorrow, if I lose the children, I want you to know that you saved my life, not just by giving me food that day, but by staying, helping, being part of this family. Don't talk like that. You're not going to lose them. But if it happens, promise me you'll try to stay in touch with them, that you'll remind the children that their father loves them. Thomas, promise me. I promise, but it won't be necessary." On the day of the hearing, they left the children with a trusted neighbor. Mrs. Margaret was a 70-year-old lady who had raised 6 children on her own and had a huge heart. "Don't worry, my son," she told Thomas. "I'll take care of them as if they were my own." The town courthouse was 2 hours away. They got a ride with a friendly farmer. The whole way there, Rachel mentally reviewed every argument, every counter-argument, every possible objection Mrs. Campbell might raise. The courtroom was small and simple. Mrs. Campbell was already there next to her well-dressed attorney. She looked at Rachel with contempt. The judge, Judge Barbara Williams, was a middle-aged woman with a serious expression. She read the case file in silence before beginning. "I'm here to decide on the custody of the minors, Ethan Thomas Anderson and Emily Sarah Anderson," she began. "The maternal grandmother, Margaret Mitchell, is requesting custody, claiming the father doesn't have adequate parenting conditions. Mr. Porter, you may present your arguments." Mrs. Campbell's lawyer stood up and began an elaborate speech about how Thomas had let the farm fall into disrepair, how the children had gone hungry, how there was a stranger living on the property. "We have statements from neighbors," he said, presenting papers. "People who saw the deplorable state the children were in. One of the statements is from Mrs. Eleanor Parker, who reports seeing the children underweight and the father in an emotionally unstable state." Rachel had expected this. Mrs. Parker had been convinced or paid to testify against Thomas. When it was her turn to speak, Rachel stood up confidently. "Your Honor, it's true there was a difficult period. Thomas Anderson lost his wife 8 months ago, and like anyone in mourning, he went through complicated times. But that doesn't make him an inadequate father. On the contrary, it shows his humanity." She presented recent photos of the children, healthy and smiling. She presented receipts for food purchases, seeds, property improvements. "I also bring statements from other neighbors," she continued, handing over documents. "Mr. Frank Thompson, Mrs. Margaret, Mr. Robert, all attest to Thomas's good character and how he has dedicated himself to his children." "And what about you?" the judge asked, looking at Rachel. "What is your relationship with this family?" "I'm the late Sarah's cousin, Your Honor. I discovered this recently, after reconnecting with the family by coincidence. I'm temporarily helping with the children's care." "Temporarily?" "Yes, until the situation stabilizes completely." Mrs. Campbell couldn't stay silent. "She's lying. She appeared out of nowhere and took advantage of my son-in-law's vulnerable state." "Order," the judge requested. "Mrs. Campbell, you'll have your chance to speak." Mrs. Campbell's lawyer tried to regain control, but Rachel was prepared for every argument. When he mentioned Thomas's debts, she countered by showing that Mrs. Campbell had much larger debts. When he questioned Thomas's ability to provide proper education, she showed there was a school in the district, and Thomas had already started the children's enrollment process. The hearing lasted hours. In the end, the judge requested a recess to analyze everything. "I'll also want to hear the children," she said. "It's their right to express their preference, considering the older boy's age." Rachel and Thomas exchanged looks, worried. Bringing the children into that environment could be traumatic, but they had no choice. The next day, Ethan and Emily were taken to the judge's chambers. Rachel waited outside, nervous. Thomas was pale with fear. "What if they get confused? What if their grandmother's presence intimidates them?" he murmured. "Trust them. Trust the love you have for them. They know where they want to be." After an hour, the door opened. The judge called everyone back. "I've heard the children," she began, "and I must say I rarely see children so articulate about their own feelings." Ethan, despite his youth, clearly expressed his desire to remain with his father. He told me about how sad he was, how he stopped speaking, and how he came back to life when Aunt Rachel arrived. Emily, even younger, was equally clear in her love for her father. Mrs. Campbell was tense. Thomas could barely breathe. "Analyzing all the facts presented," the judge continued, "it's clear there was a moment of extreme difficulty in this family's life, but it's also clear this difficulty is being overcome. The children are healthy, well cared for, and more importantly, happy and loved." She looked at Mrs. Campbell. "As for the claims about financial inability, the documents show that the farm is recovering. And regarding concerns about Miss Marina's presence, she is a relative of the deceased, and her help has been beneficial." Marina held Thomas's hand under the table. "Therefore, my decision is to deny the maternal grandmother's custody request. Custody remains with the father, Thomas Anderson." Thomas couldn't hold back his tears. Neither could Rachel. They had won. Mrs. Campbell stood up furiously. "This isn't over. I'll appeal." "That is your right," the judge replied calmly. "But I advise you to think carefully. Long legal battles only harm the children. Perhaps it would be better to try rebuilding a healthy relationship with your grandchildren, instead of trying to take them away from their father." Mrs. Campbell stormed out of the room, stomping her feet. Her lawyer followed her, trying to calm her down. Outside, the children were waiting with Mrs. Margaret. When they saw Thomas, they ran to him. "Are we going home, Daddy?" Emily asked. "Yes, my love. We're going home." On the drive back, everyone was exhausted but relieved. Rachel looked out the truck window, watching the mountains pass by. She had taken a risk, had exposed herself, but it had been worth it. "Thank you," Thomas said softly, so only she could hear. "Thank you for fighting for us." "We're family," she replied. "It's what family does." But the story was far from over. In the following weeks, life returned to its normal rhythm. Thomas worked on the plantation, which finally began showing signs of recovery. Rachel took care of the house and the children, and gradually started giving tutoring lessons to Ethan, who was behind in his studies. One afternoon, an unfamiliar car pulled up in front of the farm. Rachel felt a tightness in her chest. Could it be someone from the New York City office? Had they managed to track her down? But the person who got out of the car was a young man, in his 30s, dressed simply. "Good afternoon. I'm looking for Mr. Thomas Anderson." "He's out in the field," Rachel answered cautiously. "Can I help you?" "My name is Daniel Mitchell. I'm Sarah's cousin. I heard about what happened in court and came to see if I could help." Rachel relaxed a bit. Another cousin. More family. "I'm Rachel, Sarah's cousin too. Come in, I'll get Thomas." When Thomas arrived, Daniel explained that he had heard about the situation around town and wanted to offer help. He had a small agricultural products distribution company and could help move the farm's produce when it was ready. "Sarah and I were close when we were kids," he explained. "We drifted apart, as happens. But when I heard she had passed and you were going through difficulties, I wanted to come." "That's very generous," Thomas said, "but I don't know how I'll pay. It's not charity, it's business. You produce, I distribute. We both win. Simple as that. It was the beginning of a partnership that would change everything." With Daniel's support, Thomas managed to completely reorganize the farm. He planted crops with better market demand, invested in better farming techniques. Rachel used her legal knowledge to help formalize the partnership, create fair contracts. The farm began to truly prosper, not overnight, but gradually, consistently. The children grew up healthy, Ethan returned to school and excelled in all subjects. Emily was the joy of the house, always singing, always smiling. But Rachel knew she couldn't stay forever. One day she would need to face what she had left behind in New York City. She would need to return to her life, even if she no longer knew what that life was. "You're deep in thought," Thomas commented one evening. They were on the porch, as had become their custom. "I'm thinking I need to make some decisions. About what you left in New York City. About everything. About who I am, where I should be." "And where do you think you should be?" Rachel looked at him. In recent months, something had changed between them. It was no longer just a relationship of mutual help. It was deeper. She found herself thinking about him, worrying about him, in a way that went beyond the familiar. "I don't know," she answered honestly. "I know where I want you to be," Thomas said, turning to face her. "Here, with us, not as temporary help, as a real part of the family." "Thomas, I know it's early. I know Sarah left less than a year ago, but what I feel for you is real, Rachel. You brought light back into this house. You brought hope. The children love you, and I—" He stopped, searching for the right words. "I love you too." Rachel felt her eyes well up. She had feelings for him too, but she was afraid to admit it, afraid of replacing Sarah, afraid of taking advantage of the situation. "I don't know if I'm ready," she confessed. "I don't know if you're ready." "Maybe no one is ever completely ready," Thomas replied. "But I know I want to try. I want to build something with you." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. Before Rachel could respond, they heard a noise coming from the children's room. It was Emily, having another nightmare. Rachel quickly got up to take care of her, and the moment hung in the air. In the following days, the tension between them was palpable. Thomas had put his feelings on the table, but Rachel still didn't know what to do with them. That's when she received an unexpected call. It was from an unknown number. "Rachel Mitchell," a woman's voice asked. "Who is this?" "My name is Ms. Jennifer Reed. I'm from the Bar Association. I'm calling about your situation with the firm Wilson and Partners." Rachel's heart raced, so they had discovered where she was. "How did you get my number?" "Your former boss, Mr. Richard Wilson, is being investigated for fraud. Several complaints have been filed, and your name came up in some documents. We need your testimony." "My testimony? But I was threatened. That's why I ran away." "I know. And that's exactly why we need you. Your information could help close the case against him. He's hurting a lot of people, Rachel. You have the chance to do the right thing." Rachel hung up the phone with trembling hands. She told Thomas everything. "You need to do what you think is right," he said. "If you need to go back to New York City, we understand. But what about the children and the farm? We're in the middle of harvest. I can't just leave." "Rachel, you fled New York City because you wanted to do the right thing. Now you have the chance to really do the right thing, to stop that man. You can't let fear stop you again." She knew he was right. But the thought of leaving that family, even temporarily, tore her apart. "I'll go back," she decided, "but only for as long as necessary. I'll give my testimony and come back." What if it's not safe to return? It will be. It has to be. Rachel prepared everything for the trip. She explained to the children that she needed to take care of something important, but that she would be back soon. "Do you promise?" Ethan asked, his eyes full of fear. "I promise, my love. I promise I'll come back." "And when you come back, will you stay forever?" Emily wanted to know. Rachel looked at Thomas before answering. "Yes, forever." The trip to New York City was long. Rachel was afraid, but she also felt a new determination. She was no longer running away. She was facing it. At the Bar Association, she gave a detailed testimony about everything she had seen at the firm: fake documents, fraudulent contracts, families being evicted from their homes with forged papers. She had kept copies of everything before fleeing, and now she handed over all the evidence. "This is gold," Ms. Jennifer said, reviewing the documents. "With this evidence, we can not only sue Mr. Wilson but also help all his victims. Will he try to get revenge on me?" He'll be so busy defending himself he won't have time for that. And anyway, we'll ensure your protection. But Rachel discovered the lawsuit would be long, weeks, maybe months before everything was resolved. She called Thomas every day, spoke with the children, who cried asking her to come back. "We're having our first big harvest," Thomas told her in one of the calls. "It would be perfect if you were here. I'll be there soon." But days turned into weeks. The lawsuit against Mr. Wilson unfolded slowly. Rachel had to testify multiple times, face his defense attorney, relive everything that had happened. On a difficult night, she received a call from Ethan. "Aunt Rachel, did you forget about us?" "Of course not, my love. I would never forget you." "Then why don't you come back?" "It's complicated, dear, but soon, very soon, I'll be back." Dad is sad. He doesn't say it, but we can tell. And Emily cries every night calling for you. Rachel felt her heart break. What was she doing there, in that cold city, when her family was on the other side needing her? The next day she went to speak with Ms. Reed. "I need to go back to Pennsylvania. I can't stay here any longer." "But the lawsuit isn't over yet." "I've given all my testimony. I've handed over all the evidence. There's nothing more I can do here, and there are people there who need me." Ms. Reed sighed. "I understand, but we need you to remain available in case more testimony is needed. You know where to find me." Rachel packed her bags and bought a bus ticket to Pine Ridge. It would be almost 12 hours of travel, but she didn't mind. She was going home. When the bus finally arrived in town, it was early morning. Rachel took a taxi to the farm, her heart pounding with anxiety and anticipation. The property was transformed. What was once abandoned land now had organized green crops. The house was freshly painted, with flowers in the garden. It was almost unrecognizable. Rachel got out of the taxi and stood there looking. That's when the door opened and Emily came running out. "Aunt Rachel, Aunt Rachel!" The girl threw herself into her arms, crying and laughing at the same time. Ethan came right behind, hugging her too. "You came back. You promised and came back." "Of course I came back. I said I would." Thomas appeared in the doorway, and when their eyes met, Rachel knew she was in the right place. He approached slowly and hugged her, with the children between them. "Welcome home," he whispered. "It's good to be home," she replied. That night, after the children were asleep, Rachel and Thomas talked on the porch like they used to. "I missed you every day," he confessed. "I missed you too. New York City seemed smaller, colder. I realized I didn't belong there anymore." "And do you belong here?" "Yes, I belong here. With you. With the children. This is my family now." Thomas held her hand. "Before you left, I told you I loved you. You never answered." Rachel smiled. "I love you too, Thomas. It took me a while to accept it, to understand it wasn't wrong to feel this, but I do love you. And I want to build a life here, with you and the children." They kissed for the first time under the stars, with the sound of crickets in the background and the smell of freshly turned earth in the air. But their happiness would be tested once more. 2 weeks later, Mrs. Campbell showed up again, but this time she was different. She didn't come with lawyers or threats. She came alone, with a tired expression. "May I come in?" she asked, without the arrogance from before. Rachel and Thomas exchanged surprised glances. "Of course," Thomas said, suspicious. Mrs. Campbell came in and looked around. "The house looks beautiful, different." "What do you want, Mrs. Campbell?" Rachel asked. "I came to apologize. Nobody expected that." "Apologies?" Thomas repeated, incredulous. "I was selfish. I was cruel. I used the loss of my daughter as an excuse to try to take what wasn't mine." She sat down, seeming to have aged years. "The truth is, I couldn't accept that my daughter was gone, and I was angry. Angry at you, Thomas, for still being alive. Angry at the children for reminding me of her. Angry at myself for not being there when she needed me. You were there," Thomas said. "Sarah always spoke fondly of you, even when you argued. But I wasn't there at the end. When she got sick, I was traveling. When I returned, it was too late, and I live with that guilt every day." Rachel saw that she was being sincere, The pain in her eyes was real. "I tried to make up for it by wanting the children," Mrs. Campbell continued. "I thought if I took care of them in some way I would be taking care of Sarah. But I was wrong. They need their father. And you two—" She looked at Rachel and Thomas. "You two clearly love each other. And you love these children. I can see that now." "What changed?" Rachel asked. "I got sick. Nothing serious, but enough to make me think about life, about the choices I made. And I realized I was wasting the time I have left with anger and resentment. I don't want that anymore. I want to truly know my grandchildren. I want to be part of their lives, if you'll allow me." Thomas remained silent for a long moment before answering. "The children deserve to know their grandmother, and you deserve to know your grandchildren, but you have to respect that this is their home, and that Rachel is part of this family." "I respect that. And I apologize to you too, Rachel. I was unfair and cruel. You saved this family when they needed it most. Sarah would be grateful." Rachel felt a lump in her throat. "Thank you for acknowledging that." Mrs. Campbell visited the children that day. At first they were shy, especially Ethan, who remembered the arguments. But little by little, Mrs. Campbell won their trust by telling stories about their mother, about what Sarah was like as a child. "Your mother was as stubborn as you," she said to Emily, making the girl laugh. "And Ethan is serious like she was too," she continued. "Sarah took everything very seriously when she was little, but she had a huge heart. It was a day of healing for everyone. When Mrs. Campbell left, she promised to come back more often, but always respecting the family's space." "She changed," Thomas commented afterward. "Pain changes people," Rachel said. "Sometimes for the worse, sometimes for the better. She chose to get better." With the threat from Mrs. Campbell resolved, Rachel and Thomas could finally focus on building their future together. A few months later, they decided to make their union official. Not a big party, but a simple celebration at the farm, with the neighbors, some cousins, and of course the children and Mrs. Campbell. "Are you sure?" the town priest asked before the ceremony. "Isn't it too soon after Sarah's loss?" "It's been over a year," Thomas said, "and Rachel isn't replacing Sarah. She is her own person, her own love. What we have is different, but no less true." The ceremony was simple, but moving. Ethan and Emily were attendants, proud to see their father and Aunt Rachel getting married. Mrs. Campbell cried throughout the celebration, but they were happy tears. "My daughter would be happy," she said to Rachel afterward, "to know that her children are being raised with so much love." Rachel hugged her mother-in-law, something she never imagined she would do. The farm continued to thrive. With Daniel's partnership, they managed to expand production. Thomas had the idea to invite other small farmers in the region to form a cooperative where everyone could help each other. "It was Rachel's idea," he said at a meeting with the neighbors. "Together we are stronger. We can negotiate better prices, share equipment, help each other with the harvests." The idea caught on. Soon, 10 families were part of the cooperative. The entire community began to prosper. Rachel, using her legal knowledge, helped formalize everything, ensuring each family got their fair share. She also started providing free legal consultations for families in the region who needed help with documents, contracts, land issues. "You've found your purpose," Thomas said one evening, watching her work late on some papers. "I have. I can use what I learned to help real people, not to deceive them like at the firm in New York City, but to protect them." "And the lawsuit against your former boss?" "It ended last week. He was convicted. All the victims will receive compensation. I helped with that, Thomas. I helped bring about justice. I'm proud of you. I'm proud of myself, too." The years passed. Ethan and Emily grew up healthy and happy. Ethan became a communicative boy, a leader at school, always willing to help his friends. Emily was artistic, loved to draw and sing. "Should we have more children?" Rachel asked one day, already 3 years into their marriage. "Do you want to?" "I do. I think this family has room to grow." A year later, Michael was born, a boy with green eyes just like Rachel's. 2 years later, Laura arrived, completing the family. Ethan and Emily loved having younger siblings. They helped take care of them, taught them things, protected them. The house was always full of laughter and life. Mrs. Campbell became a constant presence, visiting every week, bringing sweets, telling stories. She helped financially when she could, but never tried to control anything. She had learned that love isn't possession. "Thank you for giving me a second chance," she said to Thomas one Christmas. "Family deserves second chances," he replied. The cooperative grew so much that it caught the attention of other regions. Soon there was interest from farmers in neighboring towns to create similar cooperatives. Rachel and Thomas traveled to help, sharing what they had learned. "Who would have thought that day on the road would lead us here?" Rachel said on one of those trips. "I was desperate, you were running away, and look where we ended up. Fate has its ways. It wasn't just fate, it was choice. You chose to stay when you could have left. I chose to trust when I could have given up. We made the right choices." On a special day, 10 years after they met, Rachel organized a surprise. She gathered the whole family, including Mrs. Campbell, Daniel, the neighbors from the cooperative, everyone who had been part of that journey. "What is this?" Thomas asked, confused by so many people. "It's a celebration. 10 years since we met. 10 years since you offered me everything you had in exchange for food for your children. I remember. I was desperate. And I was lost. But we found each other. And we built all this." Rachel pointed to the farm around them, the children playing, the friends gathered, the life they had built. 10 years ago, you said you'd give everything you had. And in a way, you did. You gave your heart, your trust, your home. And in return, you got a family." Thomas hugged her, emotional. "I'm the one who received much more than I gave." Ethan, now 16, approached with a guitar. "We prepared a song," he said. He, Emily, and the younger children sang the song that Rachel used to sing, the one that had been the first link between her and Ethan, the song that connected generations of the family. There weren't any dry eyes at that celebration. "Thank you so much for your company in this story," Rachel said to the guests when the song ended. "For being part of our life, our family, our journey. Each one of you contributed to this moment." Mrs. Campbell stood up to make a toast. "To family. Not the one we're born into, but the one we choose. To second chances, and to the love that transforms lives." Everyone raised their glasses and toasted. That night, when everyone had left and the children were asleep, Rachel and Thomas sat on the porch, in the same spot where they had had so many important conversations. "Happy?" he asked. "More than I ever imagined possible. And you?" "I thought my life was over when Sarah passed away. I thought I would never be happy again. But you showed me that life goes on, that it's possible to love again, to be happy again, without forgetting what came before." "Sarah will always be part of this family," Rachel said. "She's in the children, in the memories, in the love you had for her, and I don't want to erase that. I want to honor it. You honor it every day by being a wonderful mother to her children, by taking care of this farm that was hers, by loving this family." They sat in silence, listening to the sounds of the night. Crickets, wind in the trees, the distant murmur of a stream. "You know what I love most about the life we've built?" Rachel asked. "What?" "That it started with despair and turned into hope, that it started with hunger and turned into abundance, that it started with strangers and turned into family." "That's a good story to tell our grandchildren someday," Thomas joked. "Grandchildren? Slow down, the kids are still young." "But they'll grow up, and when they do, they'll tell this story, about how Grandma Rachel showed up at the farm when Grandpa was desperate, about how she saved the family, about how love won." Rachel smiled. "It really is a good story." The years kept passing. Ethan went to college to study agronomy, wanting to learn modern techniques to apply on the farm. Emily went to study education, dreaming of opening a school in the rural area. Michael and Olivia grew up fast, each with their unique personalities. The cooperative expanded so much that it became a national reference. Delegations from other regions came to visit, to learn from the model they had created. Rachel became a speaker, talking about rural development and land rights. Thomas became the president of the cooperative, respected by everyone. But they never forgot where they came from. Every year, on the anniversary of the day they met, they held a celebration at the farm inviting all the families from the cooperative. It was a tradition the children loved. "Why do we celebrate this day, Mum?" Olivia asked during one of these celebrations. "Because it was the day everything changed. The day your family was saved. The day love entered this house again." "And are you going to tell the story again?" "Always. It's important to remember where we came from to appreciate where we are." Rachel told the story once more. How she was walking alone, running away from her problems. How she met a desperate man asking for help. How she decided to stay. "And you weren't scared?" a child from the cooperative asked. "I was. I was very scared. But sometimes doing the right thing is more important than not being scared," Thomas added to the story, talking about the despair he felt, about how he had lost hope. "I was ready to give up, but then Rachel appeared, and she reminded me that there is always hope. There is always a way out." The stories multiplied. Every family in the cooperative had their own story of overcoming, of how they had come together, of how they had overcome difficulties together. "This is who we are," Rachel said to the group, "a community, one big family, and when someone falls, everyone else lifts them up." Mrs. Campbell, now over 70 but still strong, stood up to speak. "I made many mistakes. I almost destroyed this family because of greed and pain, but they forgave me. They gave me a chance to be part of this love, this unity. I am grateful every day." It was a moment of reflection for everyone. How many there had stories of pain turned into hope? How many had been saved by the community? When night fell and the celebration ended, the family was alone at the farm. Ethan had come from the university, Emily from the city where she studied. The 4 children were there, together with their parents. "You built something special," Ethan said. "Not just a farm, a community, a family." "And you will keep building," Rachel replied. "When it's your turn, you'll take what you learned and make it even better." "No pressure," Emily joked, but her eyes shone with determination. Michael and Olivia, still younger, just listened, absorbing every word. "What matters," Thomas said, "is to remember that everything starts with a choice. Choosing to help, choosing to stay, choosing to love, choosing to fight. It's these choices that make the difference." Rachel looked at her husband with love, that man she had met desperate, who she had seen grow in confidence and strength, who had become her partner in everything. "I chose you," she said, "and I would choose you again, 1,000 times." "Me too." The children made how cute sounds and laughed, but the truth was that that love, that partnership, was what held everything together. A few more years passed. Ethan graduated and returned to the farm, bringing with him a girlfriend, Jessica, also an agronomist. Together they implemented modern techniques that further increased the cooperative's productivity. Emily opened her rural school, offering quality education to children in the region who previously had to travel long distances. Rachel helped with the bureaucratic part, Thomas helped build the building, and the whole community came together to make the project a reality. Michael, now a teenager, showed interest in music and art. Olivia was the most like Thomas, loving the work in the field. "Each following their own path," Rachel commented, watching the children grow. "But all connected to the land, to the family, to the values we taught," Thomas added. Mrs. Campbell, despite her advanced age, remained active. She helped Emily with the school, offering history lessons and telling old stories of the region. She had become the grandmother every child dreamed of having. "You know," she said to Rachel on a quiet day, "I wasted so many years with anger and resentment, but these last years with you, with the children, have been the happiest of my life." "It's never too late to start over," Rachel replied. "Thank you for giving me that chance, for forgiving me. Family forgives, it's what we do." One day, a reporter from a major magazine showed up at the farm. He wanted to do a story about the cooperative and its success. "It's an inspiring story," he said, taking notes. "A rural community that managed to thrive in difficult times. How did you do it?" Rachel and Thomas exchanged glances. The answer was simple but profound. "Unity," Thomas said. "We realized that alone we were weak, but together we were strong." "And it started with you and Mrs. Rachel, right?" the reporter asked. It started with a desperate plea, Rachel recounted, a father asking for food for his children, and a woman who decided to help. But what made you stay? Why not just give food and leave? Rachel thought about the question. She had asked herself the same thing so many times in the early days. Because I saw it wasn't just about food, it was about dignity, about family, about love. And I needed that as much as they did. I was running from my life trying to find purpose, and I found it here. The reporter wrote everything. The story was published a few weeks later, with a beautiful photo of the family at the farm. The title was, "From a Desperate Plea, a Community of Hope Was Born." The story brought even more attention to the cooperative. New members wanted to join, other places wanted to replicate the model. Rachel and Thomas had to constantly remind themselves that the secret wasn't a magic formula. It's hard work, Thomas would explain to every visitor. It's waking up early, going to bed late. It's having patience. It's trusting others and asking for help when you need it. And it's about love, Rachel always added. Love for the land, for the community, for family. Without love, none of this works. At one of the anniversary celebrations, now 15 years after their meeting, Rachel got a surprise. Ms. Jennifer Reed, the lawyer from New York City, showed up. "Ms. Reed!" Rachel hugged her, surprised. "What are you doing here?" "I came to see with my own eyes. I heard about what you're doing here. The lawyer who ran away and ended up starting a social movement." "I didn't start anything. I just helped." "Don't downplay it. You used your knowledge to empower people, to protect families, to create real justice. That's exactly what a lawyer should do." "Thank you. That means a lot. And there's more. I'm here because the Bar Association wants to offer you an award, a recognition for the social work you've been doing." Rachel was speechless. An award? Her who had run away from New York City out of fear. "I don't need an award. I'm just doing what's right." "And that's exactly why you deserve it. Come to New York City to receive it. Bring your family. We want you to tell your story." Rachel looked at Thomas, who nodded encouragingly. "I'll think about it." That night, she talked with the family about the invitation. "You have to go," Ethan said. "Your stories inspire people, Mom. You could inspire even more." "But New York City." "It's not the place you ran away from anymore," Thomas reminded her. "You've grown, changed. You're stronger now." "We can all go together," Emily suggested. "Take a family trip." Rachel agreed. A few weeks later, the whole family traveled to New York City. It was the first time Michael and Olivia had seen the big city. "It's so different from the farm," Olivia commented, looking at the tall buildings. "It is," Rachel agreed, "and that's why I value where we live so much." The ceremony was elegant. Rachel received the Social Justice Award, recognized for her work helping rural communities. She gave an emotional speech telling her story. "I was lost when I found my purpose," she told the audience, "running away when I should have been facing things. But sometimes life takes us exactly where we need to be, and I needed to be on that farm, with that family, in that community. They saved me as much as I helped them." When they returned home, the farm had never felt so welcoming. The green fields, the open sky, the clean air. It was where they belonged. Ethan married Jessica in a beautiful celebration on the farm. Emily started dating a teacher who had come to work at her school. Michael began giving music lessons to children in the area. Olivia took on more responsibilities in managing the cooperative. "Our children are building their own lives," Rachel said one evening. "But they always come back home," Thomas replied, "because they know this is their roots." Mrs. Campbell fell ill just before turning 80. Nothing serious, but enough to remind them that time was precious. Rachel cared for her with dedication, just as she had cared for Thomas and the children years before. "You're the daughter I always wanted," Mrs. Campbell confessed in a moment of weakness. "Sarah was right about you, even without knowing you personally. She said her cousin Rachel was special." "She mentioned that?" "Yes. In the years before she got married, she said she wished she could reconnect with you. But our family's pride wouldn't allow it." "What a waste." But we reconnected in another way, through her, through this family. It was fate correcting the mistakes of the past. Mrs. Campbell recovered and lived a few more years. When she finally passed, it was in peace, surrounded by family, without regrets. She left everything she had to her grandchildren and to the cooperative, wanting her legacy to be one of unity, not division. At her funeral, Rachel remembered how they had started as enemies and ended as family. "She changed," Rachel said in her speech. "We all changed, and that shows it's never too late to choose love over hate. It's never too late to choose unity over division." More years passed. Rachel and Thomas grew old together, but never lost the sparkle in their eyes when they looked at each other. The farm prospered, the children grew up and had their own kids. The cooperative expanded so much, it became a national model. On a quiet afternoon, now 25 years since their meeting, Rachel and Thomas sat on the porch, the same porch where they had had so many important conversations. "Tired?" she asked, noticing he was quieter. "No, just thoughtful." "About what?" "About everything. About how we started and where we ended up. About how that day changed everything." "Do you regret anything?" "Not for a second, and you?" Rachel looked at the farm, at the fields where the grandchildren now played, at the house that had become their home. "No, every choice brought me here. Every hardship was worth it." "You know what I like most about our story?" Thomas asked. "What?" "That it started with a desperate request and turned into a whole lifetime of love. I asked for food for my children, and you gave me a family. You gave me hope. You gave me love. And you gave me purpose. You gave me a home. You gave me a reason to stop running and start living." They hugged, as they had done so many times over the years, but every hug was unique. Every moment was precious. Ethan appeared on the porch with his eldest son, Thomas, who had been named after his grandfather. "Grandpa, tell him that story," Ethan requested. "Which story?" "The story of how you met Grandma. He wants to hear it from Grandpa." Thomas picked up his grandson on his lap and began to tell. "Once upon a time there was a very sad man who had 2 small children and no food to give them. He was ready to give up when a young woman appeared." Rachel listened to the story being told once again, but she never tired of hearing it. It was her story. It was theirs. It was the family's. At night, when everyone had left and they were alone, Rachel said, 25 years. It feels like a whole lifetime and a moment at the same time. It was a whole lifetime, a good life. The best. They knew more challenges would come. Life always brings challenges, but they were confident they would face them together, as they always had. "Thank you," Thomas said suddenly. "Why?" "For staying, for believing, for loving. Thank you for letting me stay, for trusting, for loving me." And so they stayed, under the stars, in the same place where so many important things had happened. They didn't need more words, they just needed each other. Their story had begun with despair, but had turned into hope. It had started with hunger, but had become abundance. It had started with 2 strangers, but had created a family, and that family would keep growing, passing on the values of unity, love, and hope to the next generations. Because in the end, that's what matters. Not what we started with, but what we built. Not where we came from, but where we're going together. And Rachel and Thomas had built something beautiful, something lasting, something that started with a simple request: "Give food to my children, and everything I have will be yours." But what was truly given was much more than food. It was love. It was family. It was life. End of story. Now tell us what you thought of this story. Were you moved by Rachel and Thomas's journey? Do you believe courageous decisions like hers can change lives? Share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear what you think. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more exciting stories like this one.